Hello, this video is for you if you're doing the June 2016 English language paper with AQA, and that's the series number 4700-4705. And I'm just going to take you through the Mart scheme because examiners are incredibly kind to students, and they tell you exactly what you need to do to succeed. However, they're unkind in the sense that the language is often written for teachers. So my job is going to be to take you through each of the questions and show you exactly how to succeed. So question one is always on source one, and typically it's from a newspaper. So this is the size of an article that you might get. And the question is slightly tricky. So there's the name of the article. What do you understand from the article about the issues of child labour? So in one sense, this is just asking you to find the facts about child labour in that article. However, the use of the word understand here is a clue that you have to do some inference, some working out. Now that we know this, the Mart scheme is going to be really helpful. So detailed in the top band answer will mean that you've found virtually all of the facts, but perceptive means that you've made some inferences and worked stuff out. Let's have a look at how that balances out. Offers evidence, so those are the examples you find. In detailed engagement, again, that's having a lot of examples. Offers appropriate quotations or references, having a lot of examples. So that's going to get you quite far out of your 7 to 8 marks. But the clincher, if you like, the thing that's going to make your answer better than someone else is this, the perceptive connections and comments. And what's the easiest way for you to make connections? Well, it's simply to use some very basic connectives. If you keep using the word because, you will always be making connections. If you keep using the word therefore, you will always be making connections. And finally, if you use the word consequently. So those three words, because, therefore, and consequently, will always make sure that you're hitting that bullet point, and will always make sure that you're getting into the 7 to 8 mark range. How would that pan out in your answer? Well, the examiners give you indicative comment. Now you don't have to get all of this in, your answer may include this, but it's a help to think how we would use those connectives. So the United Nations wants to stop all child labour by 2020 because there it is in the Mart scheme. The worst areas are poor countries like in sub-Saharan Africa, where the number will jump by around 15 million. Consequently, over the next decade, it will reach 65 million. You see, by putting consequently in there, it forces me to make that extra bit of the point. It forces me to show the examiner that I'm being perceptive. There is an international agreement that all children should complete primary school. This is a different sort of connective because you're looking at a contrast. However, the three connectors that I gave you would help. Therefore, as Gordon Brown says, this will not happen unless more is done. Child labour damages children's education because, there it is again. Child labour is widespread and cruel, for example, blah, blah, blah. But the extent of the problem, so I think I'm going to have to introduce a connective for these buts, which we've got here, and that simple connective will be however, although if you want to use but, please do. Children are sometimes forced to work as well as go to school, and therefore don't achieve good grades. The UN wants to make education compulsory, paying poor families, so therefore paying more poor families to compensate. George Brown said that employing young children was the new slavery and that too many governments, agencies turned a blind eye. So here, instead of and, consequently, too many governments turned a blind eye. So you can see, I hope, that just using those three connectives, and sadly, the fourth one I hadn't anticipated, the however, will force you to get into the top band. So that's question one. Done and dusted. Question 2 is always slightly annoying because it encourages you to say stuff that's stupid. And the reason that it does that is it asks you to look at the title, look at the picture, and then comment on how it relates to the text. And what typically happens is that students say it's powerful, it's eye-catching, it makes you want to read on. All those things are true, but they don't score you any marks. You have to be specific about how it links to specific ideas or words in the text. So once again, let's go back to the Mart scheme and see how that works. Well, the first clue is this word in the question, link. Explain how the headline and picture are effective and how they link to the text. And it's the link part that's going to get you the top marks. So once again, you have to write a lot, you have to be detailed. You have to say how the headline is effective, but I'm going to suggest that showing how it's effective will be done when you link it to the words in the text. Detailed again comes up, again interpretation, this time about the picture. Links the picture and the headline to the text. That's the key bullet point that most people will miss. And obviously you've got to keep making quotations or references to the picture. Now, if we go to the indicative comment, the sorts of ideas that you may include, this gives us a really good insight into what the examiner is thinking. Well, headlines are always eye-grabbing, aren't they? But the examiner doesn't say that. The examiner talks about the direct address. It's written to you. And that's something that will crop up a lot. That's something that you will steal for your exam. Then you're going to look at the tone. Is it humorous? Is it trying to engage us playfully? Or is it, in this instance, accusatory, accusing us of something? And then they've spelt it out. It prompts us to ask the question, what am I being accused of? So an explanation of the tone of the title will always get you the mark. Right, let's look at the next one. You love cheap clothes has the same effect, but it is a personal accusation. So again, you concentrate on the tone. The two short sentences here lead to the topic. Well, your headline will always lead into your topic. So those words you can lift and steal and put in every single answer to question 2. Because the job of the headline is always to lead you to the topic. Next, we're using the word link look. Do you remember that was in the Mart scheme of a skill that you needed to do? And a really interesting way to show the examiner, hey examiner, I'm linking, is to actually use the word. Say it is linked. So this is linked to. So I'd actually have my second point in my answer about the headline to say what exactly in the text it is linked to. And then you can explain the effect. It's to make you think your actions are shameful. It's always going to be to make you think, but that alone will not get you the marks. You have to be really specific. What is it that it asks the reader to think? And if it's a protest piece, then often these things will be appropriate. Unethical, abusive or criminal. If it's not a protest piece, then you ask yourself not how you react as a reader, but how an actual reader, if this was in a newspaper, would be likely to react. Or another easier way of looking at that, I suppose, is what does the writer want to make the reader feel? What does the writer want to make the reader feel? And that will always help you get that bullet point. And then this is something that the A-star candidate will do. They will talk about the cumulative effect. In other words, when we add all these together, what we get is an attack on your morals and behaviour, well, in this instance. So you've got a kind of summary sentence of the cumulative effect. Why is that important? Well, because you want to show that you've got a detailed interpretation, and so summing it all up in that way convinces the examiner that you do. It's just a trick, really. You haven't added anything new there, really. But if it's going to convince the examiner that you're awesome, then do it. Right, now let's look at the picture. You state what the picture is. Again, we're looking at that direct address again. So how does the picture deliberately address the reader? Then your next bits of writing interpret how that picture fits the message of the text. So here it suggests that the work is relentless. Here it suggests that there is a lack of health and safety. And you just do that by focusing on details in the picture that prove things in the text. So clearly you read the text first and then ask yourself, why is that picture here? How does it make links to the argument being put forward into this text? And this text for question 2 will always be an argument. There will always be a logical position that the writer is trying to put forward, and the picture will always match that. And the easiest way is to look at the points backwards, actually. So I know that the text is asking for understanding of the terrible conditions that people are working in. Okay, so I'm going to say that that is the point of the picture, and then I'm going to pick out some details in the picture. How he's looking straight at the reader, how he seems to be greeting the reader, but the look on his face might look like anguish. So I work backwards from what I know the text is asking, and then find details in the picture to match what the text is saying. How does this force you to have links? Well, it will force you to have links if you use quotations to link to the picture and the headline. And once you use quotations to link to these explanations you've got, you'll get into the top band. Okay, question 3 is normally the one that examiners think is hardest, and the reason they think it's hardest is question 3 always asks you to infer, to work out, which is why the word explain is always in it. Explain some of the thoughts and feelings the writer has when she's in Bombay. The question will always be framed, I think, so that you're finding at least 2 things. So vital equipment for you is 2 highlighters here, one for the thoughts and one for the feelings, and you'll just highlight thoughts and feelings as you read through the article. So your job is to find those thoughts and feelings, and here we are in the top band again. Detailed, well, you're going to have quite a few quotations. Then you're going to explain them and interpret them, and we'll get to that in a minute. And detail, you'll notice it never tells you how many points you need to make in order to be detailed. That's why the indicative comment says it may include some of the following. These are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 possible points, and there are only 8 marks. And it's a little annoying that the examiner doesn't say, well, hey, find 8 of them to get 8 marks. That's not how the exam works. Actually, your exam skill is this. You've got 2 hours and 15 minutes. In that time, you've got to answer part A and part B. Annoyingly, part A takes longer but has the same amount of marks as part B. And so the easiest thing to do is look at the number of marks, which are 80, 40 for section A, and if you take 80 minutes, that's an hour and 20 minutes. That leaves you 55 marks for 55 minutes for section B, which is enough. Don't go less than 55 minutes. However, it gives us a nice little sum. If we've got 80 minutes and 40 marks, we know we spend 2 minutes per mark. And so because question 3 has 8 marks, we therefore know that you're going to spend 16 minutes on it. So the trick is every time you make a point is to offer a suggestion, and this will hopefully tell the examiner that you have perceptive explanations. Let's look at the indicative comment and see what that will look like. She felt overwhelmed by the starving millions, which suggests that. So using the word suggest signals immediately to the examiner that you're offering perceptive explanations. Annoyingly, suggest doesn't keep appearing here, but I'll show you how in your own mind it could work. She would never have believed people could survive in such awful conditions, which suggests that when she saw for herself the destitution they were living in, she was shocked. She thought the people of the waste ground were without hope, which suggests she believed they had less than nothing. She noticed things were different in the shanty towns where families emerged from their hovels, which suggests that these people were better off than others. She describes, or she thought their ability to keep neat and clean was a miracle of ingenuity, which suggests that she thinks they must have been clever and resourceful. So I won't go through all of these, but you can see how using the word suggests all the way through will convince the examiner that you're offering these interpretations. There is some objection, you might think, to using the word suggest all the time. So you can vary it with implies or indicates or signifies. But actually, you can just use the same word suggest all the way through and it would still work. Okay, well finally we come to question 4, and the key words here are compare and analyze. Question 4 will ask you to do that every time, and you'll always have to write about 2 texts. So what's going to help you is to think, well, what does comparison mean and what does analyze mean? Let's come down to the top band again. Full detailed understanding. Okay, once again, you've got to quote a lot. And what you're quoting about is language. Analyze how the writers have used language to achieve their effects. Okay, so I'm going to be analyzing when I explain the effect on the reader. So if I use that phrase, the effect on the reader is, or the effect is, I'm always going to be getting that bullet point. So I'm always going to use this word, and that will show the examiner that A, I'm talking about the effects, but B, that I'm also analysing. Right, third bullet point, offers appropriate quotations. Oh, great. So I get rewarded for quoting in that bullet point, and I also get rewarded for quoting here. That's good news. Top message, keep quoting for as long as you can. There are 16 marks, remember, so you've got 32 minutes. You're going to keep quoting all the way for those 32 minutes. How will the examiner judge that you're perceptive? Well, they'll just look at what you say about the effects, and that'll be a gut instinct. And finally, focuses on comparison between the text. So what does comparison mean? Well, annoyingly, it doesn't mean what it says. In real language that we all use every day, comparison means find the similarities. However, the good news in an English language exam is that comparison also means find the differences. In other words, as long as we just say why something is different or similar, we're going to get the marks. So that's easy marks, because every time we make a point, we'll easily be able to say, oh, that's the same as passage 1, or oh, that's different to passage 2. What's great about that is you don't have to worry about which text you're choosing. Remember, you're given a choice here, and you might think, oh, there's a secret answer. The examiner knows which text is best. But actually, no. It doesn't matter which text you used. You can pick it at random, and it doesn't matter what language you find. You can pick that at random, because everything will be either similar or different. And as long as you say that it's similar or different, you get the marks. So don't stress about that at all. You just talk about how it's similar or different. Now, the great thing about the indicative content is it gives you an idea of what your paragraphs might look like. So sometimes they're long, like this one. The phrase in utter destitution, while others live in cardboard and sacking shacks on waste ground further out, gives the reader a vivid image, okay, affects the reader, or, yeah, so you're using that word, the effect. The effect on the reader is to give a vivid image of the situation of the poor, and so I would say of the desperate situation. Destitution gives the effect, you see, even the examiner is doing it, of utter distress and penury. This means poverty. with no hope or way out, while cardboard and sacking shacks again becomes effective. So give the effect. Compared with the reader's home, fair enough, and waste ground situates these people like rubbish strewn in the open air. You don't have to write as well as this, by the way, but I'm just trying to show you how the examiner is writing about effects all the way through. And then finally, however, for some candidates this may also resonate with the plight of the UK's homeless. So you might write, another effect is that it also describes our UK homeless. Let's go to a shorter paragraph and see how that gets marks. By contrast, well, that's a simple connective that tells the examiner that you found a difference and therefore you are comparing. So that connective will always be useful. In contrast or similarly, those are the two things that will tell you whether something's different or something is the same. By contrast and juxtapose, we have the images of the balmy evening air, the blazing lights of the opulently sounding Taj Mahal Hotel, blah, blah, blah. This has the effect of creating images of wealth, well-being, indulgence and contentment. Yeah, I've put effect in there because that will be your way of making sure you explain the effect and also your way of showing the examiner that you're explaining the effect. So that's quite easy, I hope, to see how it's how your answer is structured. Remember, you don't have to put all of this in. When we look at source 2 and source 1, you can see the examiners have found more in source 1 than in source 2. That's not a clue that you should have been writing about source 1. It's actually a clue that you don't need very many developed points in order to get all your marks. Because a candidate choosing source 2 should still be able to get 100%. Otherwise the exam simply isn't fair. And then there are two really helpful bits of information at the end. Candidates need to make these and or similar examples, so you don't have to have the ones that the examiners found, but you always have to use that word, the effects. You always have to compare it, saying how it's similar or different. And to do that, the easiest way is to compare it to the purposes of the writers. So, you know, the effect is accusatory because the writer wants to change the reader's point of view. In the other texts, the effect is horrifying because the writer also wants to change our point of view. Right. Candidates may include person, tense and devices. So when you're looking at language, you can talk about whether it's in the first person, I, or the second person, you, whether it's in the past tense or the conditional, whether it's using simile or metaphor or not, but may. In other words, you don't have to find any of these things in your answer. It's not about technique spotting. The word but tells you what it is about. These need to be exemplified and their effects explained. And we keep coming back to that. If you explain the effect on the reader, you're going to get the top marks. So that's the reading part of the exam. I hope you found this particularly useful. And if you'd like more, don't forget to subscribe.